Good morning. My name is Charlotte Riverman, and I am a sophomore at Moscow High and a student in Venture Youth. Today I will be reading 3 verses, one from Matthew, one from 1 Timothy, and the final one from Galatians. If you are able and willing, please stand for the reading of God's Word. Matthew 19:14. Jesus said, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." 1 Timothy 4:12. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. In Galatians 6:9. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. This is the word of the Lord.
Thank you, Charlotte. Good morning. Welcome. I'm glad you guys are here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Uhlenkott, and it is a privilege to serve at Venture as a next-gen pastor. Growing up, I planned to be a teacher. I can't tell you why or how that idea came about, but I can tell you when my plan shifted. I was about 8 years old, standing in my grandmother's kitchen with my sister as we played with the magnets on the refrigerator. My sister was holding a baby doll, and my grandmother asked, "How many kids do you want?" My sister replied with a number. Then my grandmother asked me, and I said none. What I didn't tell her was I wanted the kids that no one wanted. Where did that answer come from? And what does that mean, the ones no one wants? Up to this point, my home life had been rough, and I often felt like I was unwanted, unseen, and unheard. There were times that I would get curious and be told I didn't know what I was talking about. I desired to be wanted, to be seen, to be heard. I saw things and had questions about the world around me. I saw struggles and I had ideas of how I could help make things better. I wanted to walk into a room, to be seen, and to have others be excited that I was there. I wanted to be wanted. I think that's where that answer came from. I can remember early on learning John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life. I remember thinking, someone loved me. That seemed to give me comfort, and I leaned on that. There are times that home life would get bad. I didn't like the fighting or the conflict. I wanted to run away and hide. I often laid in my bed and prayed, God, please make this go away. And I can remember one time my prayer shifted from, Lord, please help this go away, to, Lord, if I have to go through this so that no one else has to, so be it. I often wondered if I was the only one that experienced this. Were there others that had these thoughts? Were they looking for a place to belong, to be seen? That is when my plan shifted. What I didn't know was that my plan would continue to shift, change, be turned upside down as only God could do until he had me where he wanted me, until he had me doing exactly what that 8-year-old little girl said she wanted to do. In 2006, after adopting my son Stephen, I immersed myself in ministry. I served in kids ministry, worked in VBS, and eventually started volunteering in Awana. At Awana, we had a girl who would attend regularly, but she was quite a challenge as her family was going through tough times. We struggled to connect with her. However, during an Awana conference, a speaker encouraged us to see the potential in difficult kids and to be more intentional in our interactions with them. During prayer, I felt a calling to devote more of my time to this girl. Initially, I told God, I don't have more time to give. Then he pointed out areas that I could give up things. I said, okay. I didn't realize I could sacrifice more in the areas to be there for her. The following year, I signed up to be a camp counselor for kids camp. I had no experience. How hard could it be? 4 days with 10 girls? Easy. But I also included the girl from Awana. Her family had been attending our church, and I was slowly getting to know her. While we enjoyed getting to know the girls at camp, I felt like I hadn't done enough. By the end of camp, I felt like I had failed them, that I wasn't a good leader. 1 Corinthians 13:7 says, But love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. So I signed up to be a leader again the next year at camp and requested the same girls. We had a great time and continued to build the relationship we had. This is when I realized my desire to take the kids that no one wants was actually to make sure that the kids who were unseen were seen, those who were unheard could be heard, and those that felt misunderstood could be understood, and they would know that they are wanted. A year later, I started working for a church as a kids assistant, which turned into a kids pastor position and volunteering in youth ministry. I continued to be a camp counselor at youth camp each year with the girls from the first year. Some of the girls continued to come, some invited friends, and I built relationship with the new girls. I told all the girls that I would stay until they graduated. This May, 8 years later, I had the honor of watching seven of those girls that I had invested in and showed up for graduate. Galatians 6:9 tells us, "And let us not grow weary of doing good, for due season we will reap if we do not give up." Those girls were seen, heard, and understood, and they were wanted. When I was a student, I didn't have people in my life that I could go to that were there when in the hard times, that cheered me on in the good, and to help me know that I am seen, heard, and understood, that would remind me of God's love and purpose for me, to help me study and understand God's word and to know how to apply it to my life, to see the potential in me and call it out. I feel God's call to be consistent, safe person that the students know, but more than that, I feel called to create a safe place, safe relational environment for kids and youth so that they can connect outside of their parents and family and church. Lifeway research shows the odds of a teen dropping out of church is 2.65 times higher among those who have no adults investing in them between the ages of 15 through 18, compared to those with 3 or more adults investing in them. Among those who dropped out, 46% say an adult spent time with them regularly to help them grow spiritually. Among those who stayed in church, 58% say they had such an adult in their life. Our leaders are making an impact. It's an honor to be here at Venture and a privilege to be the next gen pastor. I see your students, whatever season of life they're in. I want them to know they have a community here that cares about them, their well-being, their relationship with Jesus, and to feel that they belong here no matter what season they're in. I've seen our students worship, pouring their heart out to God. I've seen them at the altar wrestling with God, even some running away from what God is asking. I have seen our students struggle to understand the Bible or even to know where to start. These are beautiful and amazing things, but I don't want it to stop there. I want to provide a place where your students feel safe asking questions about the Bible and wrestling with what God has for them. A place where they are seen no matter where they are on their journey, where they are heard, where they come with their questions, thoughts, and ideas, where we can sit in the mess, pray in the quiet, and walk with them as they become disciples of Jesus. In Jeremiah 1:5, God tells the young prophet, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you, and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nation." God has a plan and a purpose for our students. We had an amazing time at camp, and if I could, I'll take you there. And there was a moment when I'm standing in front of the stage as we're taking an offering, and I got to see the students with their hands raised, just worshiping God. No motive, nobody watching, just worshiping God. And it was an amazing experience just to stand there and watch these young people just be in that moment, be in that presence. I also got to watch our students pray over one another, see their fellow mates. Some of them they didn't even know. And I got to see some of them wrestle with God and what they were asking. I even got to see some kind of run away and try to avoid it. Camp was such an amazing experience to watch these kids in this week just be there with God in those moments and to hear what he had to say about them. And I wish I could take you all there. It was beautiful. At this time, I'm going to welcome up one of our students to share what she experienced at camp.
Thank you, Laura. Good morning. My name is Faith Page, and I am an incoming sophomore at Moscow High School, and I'm also a part of our Venture Youth. And for those of you who don't know me, I think public speaking is quite terrifying, but at camp I really felt like this is what God was telling me to do. So, looking back at our verse again, 1 Timothy 4:12 says, "Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech and conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." This Bible verse has always been one of my favorites because it's a really good reminder that just because I'm young doesn't mean God can't use me in some way. It is also our Venture Youth theme for this year. While learning about this verse and what it means, we got to learn about teens in the Bible and how they've played very important roles. An example would be Jeremiah. He was only 13 to 16 when God called him. Esther was about 14 and risked her life to go before the king. King Josiah was only 8 years old when he became king. And it is said that Jesus' disciples were between the ages of 12 and 18. God can use young people. I think that's a very important and really good saying, I guess. But God can use young people. Doesn't matter how old you are, you can be used. If we dive deeper into this verse, it says, "But set an example for the believers in speech and conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." Being an example to believers is being someone who will draw others to him. In order for us, the next generation, to do so, and to set those examples to younger kids, families, and peers who may not know Jesus, even a lady at the grocery store, we need to be shown what a good example looks like. That's why youth leaders who are going to be pouring into us and are intentional are so important. Last week, Pastor Emmy talked about discipleship. She said, "We must be walking with someone who is farther along in their spiritual journey with more maturity and wisdom to help us put the spiritual learning to practice." We talked later that night at our youth group and small groups that it honestly doesn't matter how old you are. You can disciple people who are older than you. You can also be discipled by younger people. As long as they are more spiritually mature and bring you closer to Jesus, they can be any age. Young students my age are the last of Gen Z, and I honestly feel like Gen Z gets a bad rap, but we are actually the generation to make a change. We are hungry for more of Jesus. We don't want Jesus for kids. We want to go deeper. And yes, we are young, but we are hungry. We want to learn and grow, and we want to make that difference. I want to be able to reach out to the incoming 6th graders or anyone younger coming into youth for the first time because I know how scary and intimidating that can be because I was once there. And I want them to know that this is a safe space where they can grow closer to God. While at camp, we heard a story about a teenage girl named Hannah. She invited this one person to church. That one person eventually baptized his whole football team. That is going to have a domino effect on their families, their friends, and their school. That's making that change. I want to see that here in our community, and I want to be a part of it. So, how can you help? We are in need of some leaders and mentors so we can be shown that example. Please see Laura in the back if you are interested in being part of our youth ministry. And like I said before, yes, we are young, but we are hungry. With your help, we can show what God can do with a hungry generation.
Thank you, Faith. Oh. We couldn't have gone to camp without your guys' support. And from the students, from the leaders, thank you for all that you did to help make camp possible. Kids camp, we took 4 kids, which is our first year to go to kids camp. Middle school, we took 7 students. And high school, we took 14 students. And that was because of your guys' support, so thank you. I also want to take this time to recognize the leaders that went to camp. So if you were a leader that went to camp, please stand up. We got Mark back there. Joy was here. We've got 2 leaders that are back there serving in kids. Tom and Deneen are also back there serving with kids. I'd also like to recognize the leaders that stayed behind to make youth possible, and that was KT and Glenn. Thank you for what you guys did. When we were having our leader meeting at camp, there was something that was said that I had to kind of think about. The director told us that at camp, 1 week of camp, we're going to spend more time with our students than we do in a whole year. That made me think, is that correct? Orange says that in kids ministry, we spend about 40 hours with our kids. We spent 96 hours at kids camp. At youth, we would spend 94 hours in a year at youth group. We spent 120 hours at camp. Those are amazing. That's an amazing number of hours to spend with our students to make an impact. I'd like to invite Mark up to tell us about his time at camp.
All right. Thank you, Laura. Can we just give a hand for the youth that have been on the stage and doing the offering and doing the greeting? It's so wonderful to see them coming up here and sharing their hearts with you, sharing their experience, and just taking the place of some of our other volunteers, and just they're getting some well-deserved visibility today. I forgot to mention, in case you haven't figured it out already, all the backgrounds to the worship we had this morning were actually from camp. So I thought that was kind of neat to have that, as you could kind of see what we were experiencing while we were there. Is such amazing and beautiful times of worship and prayer with these kids. I wanted to share a bit of my story with you. I spoke last service as well and went a little bit long, but it's second service and I have a microphone, so I don't care. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I will try and tighten it up a little bit. So I wanted to share my story because I was new to the youth. I hadn't had, I have teenagers, but I hadn't had experience doing much in the way of youth leading, I'll say that. I've spoken at a youth group a few times, but no real experience. I certainly hadn't taken any to camp. I myself hadn't really been to youth camp. I'd been to kids camps as a little kid, but nothing like this. So when Laura came up here and shared, she said, hey, she came up here on the platform and she said, we had 9, I think at that time it might have been 7, and then we got 2 more. Anyway, we had 9 boys who were signed up to go to youth camp, and they weren't going to be able to go if a male leader didn't step in and do that. So I was just kind of like, I didn't want that to happen, even though I didn't feel like that was my I didn't have a good skill set in that way. I really do feel that people who can work with youth are just really special kind of people that really have a particular skill set that I just have so much admiration and respect for, and I didn't feel like I had that at all. But I thought to myself, well, I know how impactful camp can be for these kids, and they can kind of get this opportunity to kind of get away from, get out of their homes, get out of their home churches even, and have an experience with other kids that really is special. So I decided to go, and I was just like, I'm not a big fun guy, I'm really introverted and kind of serious most of the time. But I thought, I'll make sure they stay alive. I'll make sure they, make it to meals and chapel on time, and make sure they get to bed okay. So I was like, I can do that. I'm capable enough to make sure that those things will happen. And then at least the boys can go. So I went, and as I said, I am rather very much an introvert. I was talking with Carol Breed, and she said I'm a indoor enthusiast. That's correct. Yeah, I didn't really, even as a kid, I didn't like going outside that much. I like to read. I like to watch films. I like to write. I like to play music. So, and just kind of get by myself and kind of do those things. So, when I showed up to camp, and you've got 500 kids and all kinds of obstacle courses and places to hang out and play, and there's just all this hype going on, and giant beach balls during worship. I was just like, I saw all this stuff, and all these other counselors who really experienced just getting the kids all wound up and excited, and I'm just like, this is my nightmare. I am not going to survive this. Tell my family I love them, and I will not return. I will die here. And I was like, and I got to be here. This was my first impression, and I have to be here for like 5 days. And I was just like, how in the world am I going to do this? And it was so hot. It was so hot, and you just had to be out in the open all day. It was, it was not my normal cup of tea that I would typically engage in. So I was then pleased, shortly after I arrived, to find this little leaders' lounge, they called it. And it was like tucked away in the second floor in this neat little corner and away from everything. And it was air conditioned, and it was lovely. And there was like refrigerators full of whatever, water or energy drink you wanted, and like just the entire selection of Costco snacks on these tables, anything you could possibly want. And I'm like, I could hang out here. I would be all right with that. I would, but because I really was just really nervous and didn't know what to do. And and Laura kind of encouraged. She's like, "You got it. You can't hang out there. Get out with the kids." And so. First day after kind of we got a little bit settled, there was a meeting with all the leaders, and the director of the camp, he got us together, to talk about rules, to talk about expectations, talk about all these other kind of little kind of administrative things, and and he prayed for us, and and he was praying for being thankful for the leaders who had continued to come throughout the years, or even the leaders who had been there in the previous weeks before, because this was high school camp, and they had the kids in the middle school camp before that. And I think everybody there, I don't know for sure, but I certainly was one of the few new people, if not the only, like totally new person. I did not meet anybody else who it was their first time, but I could be wrong. But anyway, he started to pray, and he said, Lord, I just pray for, the people who are here and don't feel like they're worthy, don't feel like they're capable, and he just prayed over those who maybe felt insufficient. And that moment really touched me, and I really received that prayer for myself. And so I started to think to myself, okay, what can I do? And I love conversation. I love good conversation. I love being, having that kind of intimacy with people in a one-on-one conversation where we can talk about, deep things, and have these really great kind of epic conversations. And I said, I can do that. I can do that. So as I kind of, and Laura was super great there. She was like my anchor while I was there, because I'm a little disorganized. I forget. I'm very forgetful, super forgetful. So she's like, make sure you be here at this time. Make sure you, so-and-so needs their vitamins or medicine or, all these other things, these kind of logistical things that helped keep me on track. And that really allowed me to focus on kind of having a relationship with the boys and investing in them. And I remember this one. I think this was day one, actually. That was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun in the car ride up, Mark and I talking about theology. But so anyway, I start to kind of just develop a relationship with these boys, and it's amazing what happens when you just prod a little bit and allow them to share themselves with you, to just be there, to be present, and just say, hey, what's going on? And I just started to really discover the hearts of these kids, of these boys, and and you would talk to them, and just their lives would just begin to pour out. And I was so blessed by that. And sometimes it can be hard, right? But I just felt so thankful in that moment that these boys would just open themselves to me and share themselves. And they just needed somebody to listen to them. They just needed someone to care, someone to, and you'd never know. If I found out, many times I would speak to them and I had a similar life experience or something that I could share, that I could then turn around and speak into their lives. And I really just saw God start to move in these moments, in these times with these boys. And it just began to just melt my heart and open my mind and fill up my soul. And I got to know these boys, and I got to really love them and care for them. And that was just the relational part. And we would have chapel, and there would be worship. And I tell you what, these kids are so hungry for it. They are so hungry for the word. They're so hungry for God in their lives, whether they may know it or not. And when they get in these moments, you could just start to see, it's hard being a teenager. It's hard being a kid. And you would just get in these moments and you would start to see just those burdens start to lift off. And you would just see the tears come and the laughter come. And I tell you what, one thing I did want to share that I didn't share last service was, I think a lot of adults, we can kind of, it's the same with every generation, right? Where it's like, oh, kids these days, and I think we kind of do that to this generation, and I think maybe in some ways kind of worse. But I tell you what, in those worship moments, I have never seen in my life such tenderness between these kids. I am seeing, and it wasn't just the girls, it was the boys too, just kids, arm in arm, hand in hand, hugging each other, praying for one another, laying hands on each other and praying for one another. It was such an incredible thing to see, And there's kids there, that maybe, there's always kids that maybe are different than the other kids. They were not treated any other kind of way. They were all accepted. They were all together, and they were all worshiping together. And it was just such an amazing and beautiful thing. And I didn't realize what it was doing to me. I showed up for the kids. I showed up to be there for them, to do what I could, what I knew how to do for them. But so much came back for what they were doing for me, sharing their lives with me, wanting me to pray for them, and the Lord just really just opened me up in such a way that I just won't ever forget. And we even got one of my boys. He came up to me and asked me, we'd had conversations about the Lord, and he came up to me and asked me if he could get baptized. And Laura and I got to do the sinner's prayer, and he received the Lord, and he got baptized. Come on, we can get more excitement for that. More excitement for that. Yes. What an amazing thing. What a beautiful and amazing thing. And at the end of all of this, I was praying with my boys and being with my boys during chapel, and we were just praying for this healing, and healing was being received, and it was just this incredible night of worship and prayer. And there was another counselor that I had made friends with. He was a musician, so of course we kind of connected. But he also was just this really great youth leader that I was just watching. He had lots of energy. He was so kind and great with the kids. He'd been doing it for years, and so after the healing service, he saw me praying with my kids, and and I started talking to him outside the chapel, and he said, or I started to tell him the story. We were just chatting, and I just told him the story of me being here, how this is my first time, how, and just the circumstances of how I actually got here. And he said to me, I would have never guessed. I would have thought that you were really experienced. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that's what the Lord did. I showed up scared and afraid, nervous, and the Lord just opened me up, and he put kids in my hands that, I was just there for them, and it all just started with a conversation. That's all it took. Because what it really, when you break it down to, when you think about what being a youth leader is, it's just standing in the gap. We stand in the gap for these kids, because some of them, I talked to a lot of kids and heard a lot of stories. And some of them, they're just there because it's better than being at home. Some of them are carrying some really serious pain that you just can't even imagine. And all we need to do is just be there for them and stand in the gap and just be willing. I just went to the Lord open-handed, and I just allowed him. He just put something in it, and he used me in that way, and I just felt so blessed by that. And and to that point, I do want to really encourage, for those of you in this room who might maybe feel a pull of some kind to serve. Maybe you're not quite sure what that is. Maybe you're not quite sure what that looks like. Maybe you're thinking about the logistics of all this. I think we need to adjust our relationship with serving in the church and serving our community. Because it's not, we think about our lives, and it's like it's just another thing I've got to do. It's yet another responsibility, and I got to get up early on a Sunday, or go out on Main Street and handing out pamphlets or something like that, and engaging with strangers. It's just this extra thing, and we're just stacking more on top of a already busy life that we have. But I'm not inviting you to work and to just work for the sake of work. I'm inviting you into a blessing. I'm inviting you to be blessed by the things that you can do for others. That is the solution in this world where just depression is like a plague anymore. But I have this belief that it's like, I think we're just too me-centered. We're too me-centered because everything is built around us. Everything is built around our specific preferences. And you can build a world digitally around yourself that is a perfect fit for you. And that makes us kind of forget about the outside. And then when all we have is just the thoughts in our head, and we never step outside of that, that's a depressing place. So when we serve others, we have no idea the impact that we can have on others and the blessing that that gives to us and the joy that that gives to us. So if you're feeling pulled in that way, please talk to one of the leaders here, and we can get you connected. But I'm not just saying it. I really do feel that it is a blessing and it is an opportunity for you. But anyway, thank you for hearing my story. Thank you to the kids for being such a blessing to me. Thank you for coming up here and being brave. And I think we've got